0 o'clock people really didn't like when the Warriors got Chris Paul. They were asking, why do the Warriors need an expensive 38-year-old player when they already have the best point guard ever? It seemed like a bad idea unless he comes off the bench. Having a good backup to help the young guys would be perfect for Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody. Plus, it's Chris Paul's last real chance to win a championship. But when they introduced him to fans, it was really sad. Seriously, if you compare how they introduced Kevin Durant to how they introduced Chris Paul, it's just depressing. Chris was asked about playing a smaller role. You'd be coming off the bench playing with the second team that's a la 0-33 younger than the Warriors teams from before, with JK and Moses. What do you think about their depth, their bench players that you might be playing with? You know, what's crazy? We've heard a player laugh about coming off the bench before. How do you feel about coming off the bench? And the second question is, for me, music. Hey, Peter said I gotta come off the bench, and his career was basically over after that. Chris Paul had the chance to do the whatever the team needs thing, but he laughed. Does he not know who the Warriors are? Not only 111 do they have 2 guards in Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, but those guys know how to win, and he doesn't. They lost last year, but the starting 5 was really good. Steph, Klay, Wiggins, Draymond, and Looney were the #1 group by far last season. They were plus 22.1, and second place was plus 13. That's amazing. But this 38-year-old wants to mess that up. It makes sense because he has never come off the bench before. But Chris Paul has always had a bad reputation in the league. He has fought with some of his best teammates like Blake Griffin and James Harden. 146. There are tons of stories about guys hating Chris Paul around the league, like Rajon Rondo and Patrick Beverley. When the Warriors beat the Rockets in 2019, the Warriors players chanted F Chris Paul as they went into the locker room. This could be another example of Chris Paul's bad attitude causing problems. But there is one reason it could actually work. After the Rockets lost to Golden State in 2019, they traded Chris Paul for Russell Westbrook. Houston was so desperate to get rid of Chris's contract, they were willing to give up 4 first-round picks. They took 1 more year of salary to 21 because Russ was 4 years younger. Chris Paul had gotten worse in his mid-30s. It got so bad, people thought his career was over. So the Thunder sat with Chris that summer with a plan. They compared him to other older guards like Steve Nash and Jason Kidd who got better with fewer minutes. So they asked Chris Paul to play only 60 games at most. He was so mad about that, it made him really angry. Chris Paul dominated that season and became an all-star for the first time in 4 years. He played all but 2 games and led OKC to the playoffs. When people thought 3 o'clock, they'd be in last place. People doubting him brought his career back from the dead, and he led the Suns to the finals the next year. But that was 3 years ago when Chris Paul was 35. It's been a good run since the last time he was disrespected like this. But can he do it again? His obvious role is running the second team and being a calm veteran leader for guys like Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody. And it helps manage his minutes to prevent injury. If Chris Paul demands to start, they can always work around it. You just start him. Then take him out 3:36 early and make sure he never plays on the court with Steph Curry. But if it goes badly, it's another example of how the Warriors' management hurt their winning streak. I know hurt is a strong word. They won 4 championships, but how many more could they have won? Back in 2020, Kevin Durant had just left, Klay was injured, and Steph broke his hand early in the season. It led to their worst record since 1953. But it got them the number 2 overall pick, the perfect chance to replace KD with a great player to keep the winning going. At the time, ESPN said they 414 should look to trade the pick for players, like Toronto's OG Anunoby, Phoenix's Mikal Bridges, or Atlanta's John Collins. Now, I'm not saying they could have gotten all of those guys, but Steph, Clay, and Draymond needed help. Instead, they came up with a 2-timeline plan to set up another championship team down the road. That almost never works in the NBA. But Golden State thinks they're super smart, so they drafted James Wiseman, who didn't fit their timeline or their style of play, a total failure that did nothing for their 2022 title. But in 2021, they had 453 lottery picks, and we know of at least 2 veterans that were available to trade a few months after that draft. The Magic traded Aaron Gordon to the Nuggets for Gary Harris, RJ Hampton, and a protected 2025 first round pick. And the Raptors traded Norman Powell to the Blazers for just Gary Trent Jr. and Rodney Hood. Both players, Norman Powell and Aaron Gordon, could have been Warriors, but they passed them up for Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody. What did they do for Steph, Clay, and Draymond? Look, I know the young Warriors have a special place, 529 in the fans' hearts, but can you imagine Aaron Gordon on that team? Instead of helping Denver win a championship, he would be helping the Warriors, and he's a perfect fit next to Steph Curry. Then, after Draymond punched Jordan Poole, they paid Poole too much money, which led to taking on Chris Paul just to get rid of Poole's bad contract. But the bench thing is actually not the biggest problem. Even Steph Curry just said everyone's talking about the second unit thing. But when I'm off the floor, you have another ball handler in Paul who knows how to play the game and make 604 the guys around him better. Exactly. It doesn't actually matter who starts, it's who finishes and how Chris Paul can make his teammates better. Starting is not the issue, it's his history in the playoffs. I'm sorry, healthy or not healthy. We have seen this now for 18 seasons. Chris Paul is a smart player, but if you want to win championships, he's not your guy. He has a history of choking in the biggest moments. There are many examples, but he became the first player to blow 4-2 to 0 leads in a best-of-7 series in 2021. Then he did it again in 2022 when the 644 Mavericks beat them with Luka going crazy. Is there a chance adding Chris Paul is just the latest mistake by this front office? Based on his recent comments about coming off the bench, it could be, but there is one way that they can save this. Chris Paul could begin the year in the starting lineup. He's motivated by disrespect. He'll be fresh from the offseason, so Chris Paul could play well. Then at the trade deadline, they move him for 1 or 2 depth pieces. With that, they could make another run in the playoffs. The last time Golden State had depth with 720, Otto Porter, and Nemanja Bjelica, they won the championship. But the first thing they need is to handle this awkward Chris Paul situation. It'll be the big distracting story at training camp. But hey, maybe the Warriors can use their young guys to win the in-season tournament. Look, a lot of people are hating on the in-season tournament, but I think people just don't understand what it actually is. And they need to understand because the mid-season tournament is coming this next year. So I made a whole video breaking down what the entire thing is. 751 all about and why people need to stop hating on it. Check it out. Thank you.